Who? Jim's voice rose. Who in this town did one thing to help Tom Robinson? Just who? His colored friends, for one thing, and people like us. People like Judge Taylor. People like Mr. Heck Tate. Stop eating and start thinking, Jim. Did it ever strike you that Judge Taylor naming Atticus to defend that boy was no accident? That Judge Taylor might have had his reasons for naming him? This was a thought. Court-appointed defenses were usually given to Maxwell Green, Macomb's latest addition to the bar, who needed the experience. Maxwell Green should have had Tom Robinson's case. You think about that, Miss Maudie was saying. It was no accident. I was sitting there on the porch last night, waiting. I waited and waited to see you all come down the sidewalk, and as I waited, I thought, Atticus Finch won't win. He can't win. But he's the only man in these parts who can keep a jury out so long in a case like that. And I thought to myself, well, we're making a step. It's just a baby step, but it's a step. It comes from, of course, To Kill a Mockingbird, chapter 22 by Harper Lee. So a while back, I saw a play adaptation of it at the local theater here, and that's what inspired me to make this video. So what I'm getting at here is that it's important to realize the extraordinary difference between the way things are and the way things ought to be. And when we don't, we assume of ourselves a kind of immense burden that can never be met. And this can lead to a kind of permanent feeling of having thrown pearls before swine, a listless feeling that all of our work is wasted. It's worthwhile to keep in mind the reason oysters produce pearls in the first place, because something sticks in their craw and forces them to turn the problem into a solution. And though it takes a lot of time and energy, this process allows them to create something beautiful. So instead of being mad or upset when our pearls are rejected, we need to use it as an opportunity to reflect. And we can use this energy to do something creative or learn how to do better. It's important to understand that not everyone will appreciate your work or even understand it. Schopenhauer once wrote that talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. But do realize that even by making people consider a new perspective or question their own, you've actually done great service to humanity. Voltaire said that we will leave this world stupid and evil as we have found it upon our arrival. Right, so part of the reason for this is that it takes so long for good ideas to take root in any culture, if they even do. It can be decades or centuries before great thinkers have any impact or are noticed in any degree in the world. And this is all the more sad because the number of people who really care about ideas in a serious sense are also intelligent is a really tiny fraction of the population. If we go by IQ, 14% of the population, that's one standard deviation, are gifted to some degree, and only a tiny portion are extremely gifted. And you also have to think about the fact that not every intelligent person is interested in intellectual pursuits or theoretical formulations and so on. So even now, there's no way to know what great scientific, philosophical, moral, whatever achievements have been lost to history or obscurity. Schopenhauer also wrote about how mediocrities are like weeds that cover up what would otherwise be greater plants because of their sheer number. But aside from that somewhat elitist observation, we also have to consider the difficulty in plowing through the incredibly massive amount of literature and information that's available to us, especially nowadays, and what has been lost in fires, wars, plagues, like burning the Library of Alexandria and other things like that throughout history. So it makes it really difficult to determine which ideas really are best, and it probably contributes to fewer people deciding to get really serious about ideas. After all, you'll likely be dead long before you have an impact anyway, if you ever do. But none of that really matters, because ultimately that's not what the point of learning and cultivating yourself really is anyway. The point is because it's challenging, because it's fun, because it's harrowing, exciting, beautiful, and mysterious. But more than these, the point is that learning, moral and philosophical, psychological and physical, scientific and aesthetic, are required by our very nature. It's not that we do this or we don't do it, it's more that we either do it well or poorly, and that's the real point. Reason, broadly defined and broadly speaking, is an absolute. That includes things like discerning just how much a role for emotion there is in the good life, and how to respond or train yourself to react to your environment, including your internal environment, as much as it does figuring out things like how far away the moon is from the Earth. But I'll have a lot more to say about that soon. Until then, keep striving, don't stop what you're doing, keep challenging yourself, and keep your wits about you. Peace.